Computer audio. Okay. Chat. Morning. Can you hear me? Anybody? Yes, thank you. Okay. Let's wait a minute or two. People are still showing up here. So I'm hoping that to get a few more. So we'll wait a minute or two. And we'll see how things go. Kendra's here. Okay. Lexi's there. Mackenzie, all right. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna ask people to type your name into the chat, because then I will have a record of everyone that's here, because otherwise, in case I sometimes miss things. And so please type your name into the chat, and we'll I'll have your written record that you're here. And let's see, Kaylee Myers here. Okay. All right, so it's 9 o'clock, so I might as well get started. A couple things that I want to talk about. So with the doing things mostly online. So I have a couple anatomy classes, plus I have another class. So online every week there's quizzes and a forum to do. And then we have an assignment that you put in online. And then, I'm trying to do the regular exams and stuff like that. So all of that means that there's more stuff for me to grade, and I'm behind on the grading. Okay, I apologize. I will get to it, but it means that just things are going to be slower. Sometimes it'll take me, I'll try and do the exams faster, but like on the forums and the assignments, those trickle in anyway, and so it takes me a long time to grade them. If you have a specific question, you have to email me, and I try and get back in the emails in a day or two. And just email is taking me longer to get through. So I have a lot more stuff to get through than usual. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be working on it and submitting it. It means that it takes longer, and this is part of what we're doing. And so, you have to be patient, but you also have to.
60. And I just turn him down all the way. So I just let it play. So he thinks I'm actually.
Your thing going.
It's a participation.
Okay.
What happens if he says, "What do you think there, Palmer?"
They don't ask you that. Come on, I'm just glad.
So I'm going to mute you if you're kind of talking over me, so that just to let you know that can happen. All right, so the grades are late, and if you have a question, email me, and I will try and get back to you sooner. The exam 1 grading is done, and generally that turned out okay, pretty much like I expected. A couple things though that are different about online stuff versus at home stuff or in class stuff. So you've got your textbook there, so there's a limited time. Because all the answers are probably in the textbook or online. So that means I have to limit the time because it's what it is. You should be studying and you should be able to answer these questions within 60 minutes. And so if there's not enough time, then if you find that there's not enough time, my feeling is, well, you don't know it then. And so this is part of it. Likewise, the essays are a little bit different because we're online. So in some cases, I would write things like add more details or check details. Again, it's all in your book. I don't want you to just copy the book. I want you to be able to compose an answer. And so if I'm getting stuff that, okay, this is just right out of the book, she's just kind of copying out of the book or he's copying out of the book, I probably wrote a comment that is like in your own words, ? Which I think, okay, this is too close to the textbook. You're using phrases and words that I just never hear from students if they have to explain this on their own. But if they're just copying out of the textbook, this is what I get. I wasn't super hard on that. I would say, is this in your own words? And what I'm telling you is, I know it's not. I know you're just copying out of somewhere else. In other cases, people are trying to explain it and they garble the details. And to me, that's better than if you're just copying out of the textbook. Because if you're just copying out of the textbook, how do I know if you understand it? What I think is you probably don't. And if you're at least trying to explain it, then I think, okay, they know that this is involved and they've got a few of the details wrong, but that's better than just copying out of the textbook. So I wasn't really hard on you if you were copying out of the textbook and you got to kind of the right places. However, on the next exam, I will be much harder. If you're taking stuff and just copying out of the textbook, that's going to be a very, very low grade, like 0. And so if I find phrases, half of sentences that are just straight out of the textbook, that's going to be a 0. It's got to be in your own words. So look over the exam, look over the comments on the questions, the essay questions. I don't write a huge amount because it takes me a long time. But I'll write something like check details, add more details. Often people don't use an example. I want you to be able to come up with an example. And so if you have more specific questions on your essay, then let me know. I will put the essays further up in the exam because there were some people that just didn't get to them or didn't have enough time. And so we'll see how it goes. This is a learning process for everybody, for me, particularly for you. And so I want to make sure that people get a chance to improve over time. And so there's lots of tests. Don't panic if you didn't do as well as you like. There's time to catch up.
How are we able to review our exam?
Pardon? Who was that? Can you repeat it?
How are we able to review our exam?
If you go, you should be able to review questions. If you go to your grade book, it'll say comments, and the comments are usually restricted to the essay questions, and you'll be able to tell. And I think the comment will pop up on the questions, so specific comments. I'll make sure after we're done, I'll check to make sure. But if you go, I think you can review your exam, try, and I think you can get your comments. Okay. If not, ask me, and I will ask me during lab, and we can do it during lab. Okay.
Okay.
Good question. All right. Let me, okay, let me share a screen. I want to talk a little bit about skin cancer. Okay. Can you see the slide? UV light damages skin, aging, and mutation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, it's some things are really people have confused ideas about them, but the answers are pretty clear. One of the answers is the hardest thing on your skin is ultraviolet light. It's responsible for all skin cancers, and it's responsible for aging your skin, wrinkles, irregular skin, lumpy skin. It's all UV light. UV light is, you know, if you pass white light through a prism, you can break it up into this spectrum of colors. And this spectrum goes from red, orange, yellow, green, blue. It turns out that there is light beyond blue. It's called ultraviolet. And we can't see it with our eyes, but it does carry energy. Okay, you know, like light can, if it hits your skin, it makes it warm. That's the energy of light. The light that actually has the most energy is this ultraviolet light. And the energy in that light is so intense that it can change chemical bonds. Okay, in the case of proteins, it just breaks the bonds, and so it breaks proteins. So wrinkles are due to their resulting breakage of elastin and collagen models or molecules, and those molecules are then broken, and so skin doesn't appear smooth, it doesn't snap back like it used to. You get wrinkles. In the case of DNA molecules, it causes some nucleotides to stick together in inappropriate ways. The formation of these thymine dimers, which you see here. And this causes kinks in the DNA strand. Okay, if that kink is unrepaired, the DNA can't be copied, and so the cell can't duplicate, and these kinks can break, and that can cause the cell to die. It's apoptosis. Some DNA damage can be repaired perfectly, and so that sometimes there's no effect on the cell. But in other cases, the DNA repair is faulty. And so it changes the DNA code, which can lead to a protein not being made or a protein being made incorrectly, having the wrong amino acids. And so the protein may not do its job. When a gene that's damaged is involved in making proteins that regulate mitosis, this can lead to cancer. It can produce cells that no longer respond to the normal controls on mitosis. Okay, so let's see if I can get to the next slide. Do you see the skin cancer slide? Anybody? Oh, shoot. Do you see the skin cancer slide? Can someone say yes or give me a thumbs up that I can see?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, shoot. It keeps moving. Okay, skin cancer. All right, so the only cause of skin cancer is ultraviolet light through damage to these DNA segments that normally control mitosis. Okay, and by far the most common cancer are skin cancers. Okay, there's good chance that most of us will get skin cancer at some point. The most common skin cancers are basal cell carcinomas and squamous cell carcinomas. And fortunately, they're the most treatable and the least aggressive cancers. There are millions of new cases of these cancers every year. They're related to chronic exposure to ultraviolet light. People usually get them on the bridge of their nose, their cheeks, their ears, the back of their neck, their hands, maybe their shoulders. Okay. The good news about these is that they're slow growing and they rarely spread to deeper tissues. So they can easily be treated by surgical removal. Okay, and so they're good, very good prognosis. In fact, my dad used to get basal cell carcinomas. From the time he was 50 to all the way when he was 90, when he passed away. He would get these basal cell carcinomas. He would not get them treated very quickly. He would, you know, my mom would say, "You've got one on your nose again. You've got one on your cheek. Go to the doctor." And eventually he'd go and they'd cut them off, and it was never a problem. However, there are skin cancers that are far more dangerous. The good news is that they're much less common. Melanoma occurs in about 90,000 people per year. The bad news is that it occurs in young adults. Okay, it's not a skin cancer that happens into people my age. It's much more likely to happen to young people. And instead of chronic exposure, usually it happens because of severe sunburns. Okay, and so melanomas are much more likely to arise in young people. They're much more likely to spread into deeper tissues. And if not caught early, then they have to be treated with things like radiation, chemotherapy, much more difficult treatments. Okay, there is good news though, is that melanoma is fairly treatable. Okay, it's not a death sentence. More than 80% of the people survive at least 5 years, and many will survive decades. So it's very treatable, but it does produce a significant number of annual deaths, 8,000. Okay, with skin cancers, particularly melanoma, the important thing is early treatment. Early diagnosis and early treatment leads to better outcomes. And so melanomas usually arise from pre-existing moles. These moles start growing in abnormal ways. They start becoming asymmetrical, their borders change, their color change, and they start growing. Okay. You should carefully monitor your moles. You should do if you think a mole is changing, you need to go in and have it biopsied. And so they'll surgically remove it and then go look and see if it is cancerous. Okay. With all the skin cancers, okay, it's important to know how susceptible you are. Okay. That if you have fair skin, very light colored skin, if you have blue eyes, if you have blonde hair or light colored hair, you are far more susceptible to all the skin cancers. Okay, and so it's particularly important. If you have freckles, if you have moles, you're more susceptible. But even if you have dark colored skin, you are susceptible to skin cancers. You're more likely to get the basal cell carcinoma than other cancers, and they're more likely to occur when you're older. But UV exposure damages skin, and so your skin can look wrinkled and old quickly if you're exposed to more ultraviolet light. And so particularly those people that like to spend time outside, who have jobs where they're outside a lot, farmers, people that work on outdoor utilities, those type of people really need to be careful about their skin, cover up, wear sunscreens and sunblock. Be aware of these things. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So this week's forum is on skin cancer. There's a little quiz about how to ask you how much you know about skin cancer. There is also a little kind of calculator to help you gauge your risk. And so those are nice things to do so that you're aware of what's going on there. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question about our lab assignment. Is it
Yeah.
just page 77 or is it page 77 and 78?
I don't have my lab manual in front of me. It's just one page. I think it's 77. It's all written questions.
Okay.
Okay. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions on UV light, skin cancer, tanning? Does anybody do tanning beds? Okay. Tanning is still UV light, so it still will age your skin. If you tan evenly and carefully, it won't affect your risk for melanoma, but it still increases your risk for having aged appearing skin, and it increases your risk for basal cell carcinoma because it takes the UV light to stimulate the cells so that they produce more melanin. Okay, and so it is using a damaging radiation to change the color of your skin. So if you're born pasty white, it's healthiest to remain that way. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. I think there was another thing I wanted to go over. So let's see if I can share another thing. Was it this one? Oh no, it was it was skin temperature. Shoot. It's not this one. Shoot, let's stop this. We have to go back to this other one and talked about body temperature. Whoops, wait, hold on. Okay, let me try this. Do you see the body temperature deal? Yes. Okay. So the skin is the major effector organ in body temperature regulation, but not the only one, and not the it plays a really important role, but not the only role. So let me get to the right spot in the textbook. Okay, so skin temperature, there are receptors in the skin for temperature, but there's also receptors in blood vessels throughout the body monitoring the temperature of blood. And our control center is in our brain. It's a little region called the hypothalamus. It's a central brain region just behind the eyes, and it's above a gland called the pituitary gland. And this control center, it's not worried about regulating the temperature of your skin. It wants to regulate your core body temperature. It wants to keep the blood that's going to your brain and your heart and your lungs right at 98.6 Fahrenheit. It wants to keep that blood warm so that your heart and lungs function well, and so your brains function well. Okay, so it's monitoring the core blood temperature, and it's also monitoring your skin temperature. Okay, and so what it can do to control temperature is to control heat loss through the skin, and it can control the flow of blood. Okay, and so when you want to lose more heat, the skin is going to activate these eccrine or merocrine sweat glands that produce a watery fluid on the skin, and that will evaporate. And the fastest way for you to lose heat is for your sweat glands to produce fluid that can evaporate from the surface of your skin. Okay. At the same time, it does that, the hypothalamus will also direct blood flow to be closer to the skin, to get that too warm blood right next to the skin. And so when evaporation carries heat away from the skin and cools the skin, it also cools the blood. And so you have these blood vessels right below the surface of the skin. They're in the upper layer of the dermis. Okay, and those can be cooled. Okay, when you're cold, when your hypothalamus is getting information that the temperature of the blood is falling, okay, then it's going to deactivate those sweat glands, and it's going to take blood away from the surface of the skin. Okay, it'll take blood away, so the blood will either go deep into the skin, or if you're really cold, it'll cut the flow off of blood to the skin entirely, maybe even to whole arms or legs, so that it can allow the temperature of those things to fall, so it keeps the warm blood near the heart, lungs, and the brain. Okay, there's a really nice description of this, a nice picture of this, and a nice section on this in your textbook, beginning on page 1191 and going through 1192 and 1193. Okay, and this talks about metabolic rate, but it also talks about blood flow and this whole regulatory system that's involved in keeping body temperature at the right levels. So it involves more than just the skin. It involves the brain. It involves a couple other organs as well, because the skeletal muscles can produce heat through shivering. And so if you're really cold, the brain can ramp up heat production by telling the muscles to start contracting in these kind of uncoordinated shivering contractions. Okay, in addition, the hypothalamus can direct a gland, the thyroid gland, to increase metabolic heat production. Okay, and so the thyroid gland can cause your cells just to produce a lot of waste heat, particularly your liver. Okay, and so, and this is the reason why, you know, this morning was at 45, 50 degrees. Okay, that felt really cold. I don't know if you went outside, but I went outside and 45 degrees felt cold. I got a shirt on, an undershirt, and a jacket, and I was cold. Okay, you know, 50 degrees. It feels really cold this time of year. But in January, 50 degrees feels unbelievably warm. And that's because for months, our hypothalamus is directing our thyroid gland to increase metabolic heat production. And so 50 degrees in January and December feels really warm, and we go out in a t-shirt and it feels warm. It feels warm, it smells like spring, and that feels good because metabolic heat production can be increased. So read this section on 1191 to 1193. It also deals with temperature regulation and those other organs that are involved, the hypothalamus, the thyroid gland, and then the liver and skeletal muscles. Okay, all right, let me stop the sharing. Does anybody have any questions about temperature and the skin?
I have a question over the exam when it just says like the reviewing is not permitted.
Okay, I can change that. I might have closed it, had it closed until it was corrected, and I forgot to open it. But let me try and do that today. Open exam. You should be able to see your score, Chloe. Yes?
Yeah, I see it, but when you're talking about the reviewing and seeing what you said about them.
Okay. If you go to the grade book, sometimes if you go look at your grades, it sometimes lists comments right next to your next to the grade. Can you see it that way? Well, I don't know. We'll check. Okay.
Yeah, there's no comments there either.
Okay. All right. While I'm on Zoom, I can't go try to fix that. So I will
Yeah,
try
that's
not.
fine.
I will do so right afterwards. Okay. So once again, make sure that if you came late, you use the chat to put your name in, so I know you were here. We'll continue to do this. What else do I need to say? So you can check over the exams. If you have any question on the exam, let me know. If you're having trouble finding that, we'll go over it on Tuesday in lab, so that it'll just take a minute to do that in lab and do it. We're headed into organ systems now, so each week I will go over kind of what is the organ system, the specific functions of the organ system. That's important to be able to describe those specific functions. Then I'll talk about any the cells and tissues of that organ system, how the organ works, and then any common health impacts. So like with skin, we talked about the functions of the skin, we talked about the layers of the skin, the cells of the skin. In particular, production of skin color and temperature regulation are really important. Cancer is important, and then that homeostatic mechanism about body temperature. So we'll do that same kind of format each time. And so we're always going to go, so you'll be able to kind of tell what's important. If you have a question, let me know. You know, it's the same as before. Okay. All right. So we're coming up on 30 minutes. So I'm going to, unless anyone else has a quick question, I'm going to say goodbye. All right. I will go and make sure that you can look at the exam. I'll be working on grading this weekend, so I'll look on the forums and the lab stuff and hopefully be caught up early next week. All right. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you in lab on Tuesday.